probably just about everybody knows about the FLDS and what they are. They're, I think most people think of them as a church. I don't think of them that way. I think of them as an organized crime syndicate. And that's it. And I believe that's something that's essential when you deal with the FLDS and similar groups. I wrote Prophets Pray a few years ago. It took me a long time, and I asked my friend John Krakauer how we could best get the word out. And of course, John told me to write a book. And so I decided that's what I'll do. I'll write a book. And I was hoping John would really, take over and be a part of it. But the best I got from John is, "You're almost there. Keep going. You'll get there pretty soon." So he did write the foreword, which was great, and I appreciate that. John did that for me. When I first became started with the FLDS, it was basically curiosity. I had been in southern Utah for about 10 years, and I picked up the newspaper one day, and there was a picture of this guy, Reich, on the front page of the Daily Spectrum. And he was holding up that copy of Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And I had read that book when I was very young. I mean, like 9, 10 years old. And it captivated me. I just really couldn't fathom how an entire country could lose their mind all at one time. And because of that book, I continued to study what happened in Nazi Germany over the years. And so it really captured my attention. And I thought, well, I've been in southern Utah for 10 years now. When I moved there from California, I didn't even believe there was such a thing as polygamists. In fact, when I left, I told my business partner I'm moving to Utah. And he said, "You're going to go to Utah? There's polygamists there." And I go, "There's not either, Gene. There's no polygamists in Utah. That was 100-something years ago. There's no polygamists there." And he goes, "I'm telling you, there's polygamists there." And sure enough, when I got to Utah, I walked into the supermarket, and there was like 4 women there. And there was about 10 children. And 2 of the 4 were pregnant. And there was all these little kids trailing after it. And I thought, oh my gosh. They were wearing these long dresses and had this funny hairdo. And I was going, oh my gosh. These are polygamy. So I tried to be polite. And just kind of, look. But I couldn't do it. I just finally said, okay, they're going to know that I'm sneaking peeks, and so I just looked at it. and got it over with. Because I wanted to, I was studying their facial features, and I heard about inbreeding and things like that, and I was really curious about it. But anyway, Ross piqued my curiosity. He was asking for help. He's holding up that copy of Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, saying, "I'm in trouble. My spiritual leader has told me to get out of my home, to leave my home and my family, and to go repent from a distance. And my wife is going to be reassigned to another man. My children are going to be reassigned to another man. And I'm not going to have anything to do. My children are going to call another man father. My wife is going to be sleeping with another man. And I don't want to leave my home." And he was asking for help. So I didn't know if I could help or not. I was a private investigator. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't understand much about it, but I was really curious about it. So I drove to Colorado City. It's an hour and 15 minutes from my home. And when I got there, I didn't know what to do. And I'm sure when I think back at it now that I was being followed all around town, But I really didn't know what to do when I got there, so I went to the city hall and I asked the woman at the city offices, if you know where Ross Chatwin is. He's a bit of an apostate, somebody who was ground on in the town, and she was so shocked. She goes, he's 2 blocks over and 1 block up. So I went there, and as I arrived, I pulled in the driveway and I go, I don't know if I should be doing this. I'm just going to drive around town and take a look and see what's going on. As I started to leave, he came out of his house and he said, hey, how you doing? And started talking, which is completely uncharacteristic of most LDS members, that he was desperate. I mean, desperate enough to do something and step completely out of his comfort zone and come and talk to a Gentile like me. So we started a dialogue, and then he invited me into his house. And once we started talking, he started telling me all these things about underage marriage, young girls being married to older men. And he was telling me this in the context of telling his story. It wasn't like he was telling on somebody or telling me all these bad things that were going on. This was just life there. And in the process, he started telling me of all these illegal things and so on. I mean, it was frightening for me coming from another place to hear about this. And I decided to take his case, and we won. We won his case. He was able to get a life estate in his home. It was an eviction case. He stayed there. His wife did something totally uncharacteristic in that state. The Biden prophet stayed with him. And this is the prophet. This is Warren Jeffs. He's now doing life in prison plus 20 years. This is a picture that he sent out to his wives. This is the swinger of Warren Jeffs. This is Short Creek. Now, this is where many of the FLDS are based. They're really spread out all over the country. I think one of the problems with the FLDS is a lot of people tend to think of them as this little small cult that's, tucked away. And they are tucked away. These cliffs are these Vermilion cliffs that you see back there. And they are just incredible. And they've hidden this little town away on the Utah-Arizona border for legal reasons. There's jurisdictional problems with venue going back and forth across Utah and Arizona. And so they planned it very well. This is completely isolated. The closest real town is St. George, Utah. It's about 45 minutes away. And going the other way, there's Kanab and the north rim of the Grand Canyon in the other direction. So it's really isolated geographically, and they're completely sequestered from much of Utah and Arizona. They're really there by themselves. I put this in here. I'm not even sure how you say this town. It's LaGrange. Is anybody from Texas? And I picked this because it's a town of typical size. And then the point I wanted to make with that is the FLDS have a town that's the size of LaGrange, Texas. And with all that comes all the resources that come with the town. LaGrange has a police department, so does Short Creek. Short Creek, actually I call it Short Creek, but the towns are really named Hilldale, Utah, and Colorado City, Arizona. There's a street running down the center of it. It's called Uzona. On one side of the street, you're in Utah. On the other side of the street, you're in Arizona. But it's been known historically as Short Creek, and that's easier than saying Hilldale, Utah, and Colorado City, Arizona. So now LaGrange has a police department. So does Short Creek. The only thing is the police department at Short Creek, town marshals they call them, are all FLDS members. They do not take their orders from anybody but that swinger you just saw, the prophet Warren Jeffs. When it comes to deciding between the laws of man and the laws of God, they will pick the laws of God without any hesitation. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what laws have been broken. Warren Jeff says ignore it, and they ignore it. He tells them to arrest someone without probable cause, and that's what they'll do. But also comes all the resources like ambulance service. Short Creek has an incredible emergency medical services. In fact, they have the only scuba diving certified search and rescue in Utah and Arizona. They take advantage of all the government programs and are very well equipped for anything. They also take advantage of Homeland Security grants. They're the fourth largest receiver beneficiary of Homeland Security grants in Arizona. They receive things like high-tech thermal imaging devices, firearms. They receive training in, you name it. I mean, kidnapping negotiating techniques, bank robbery negotiating techniques. Anything you can think of that's free, they get it. And so with not only this little religious group, are the resources of the people, but also the resources of the government, and I mean massive resources. Right now in Short Creek, Warren is dividing the people into the haves. These are the haves right there. And the have-nots. This is what Short Creek looks like really. A lot of people have equate the FLDS with being a real fastidious type people. People have seen the news stories coming out of El Dorado, Texas, about how neat and clean and tidy everything is, and how there's nobody there that receives welfare. But that's not true. This is the real FLDS here. These are the leaders' homes right there. And in Texas, in El Dorado, it's called a place of refuge. In fact, the code name for it is R17. And each place of refuge has their own code name. There's Warren again. I have to find the goofiest pictures I can find. And show them because I guess because I'm fascinated about what makes that squirrel cage of a brain turn in his mind. But these are some of the have-nots here. You know, he's the have, and these are the have-nots. You'll notice a lot of these girls are barefoot. It's because they can't afford shoes. Their parents have given them everything they have to the church. I mean everything. This family right here, this is actually a sister to Dr. Dan Fisher, who was my benefactor for 4 or 5 years when I first started working on these cases. His sister is now living in that metal building back there, along with her 11 children. These are 11 children. A van is just came by and dropped off some food. The kids are grabbing the food, trying to get as much as they can. They have to live in this metal shed because Warren is further divided to haves and have-nots. He's very brilliant, and he's divided the people into 2 groups now. There's what's called a repentance group, and there's the true united order, which is the most righteous. So what you have is this repentance group who is trying very hard to get into the true united order. They want nothing more than to be back and be part of the most righteous. And they'll do anything. They'll do anything to try and get back in. Then you have the true United Order, and they will do anything. They'll do anything to prove their loyalty and obedience so that they don't become relegated back to the repentance group, or worse, being kicked out of the church entirely. So you have these kind of like competing groups, ones that are trying to do everything they can. In the places of refuge, Warren keeps the most righteous. And I'm really glad I could come. I'm really grateful for being here, because he's weeding them out and taking the worst of the worst, the ones that will do anything he says. And we're not talking about a few people. We're talking about thousands. I was there last Sunday, and there were thousands of vehicles, thousands, just at the meeting house in Short Creek. That's not counting El Dorado and the other places of refuge. So we're talking thousands, and it does my heart good to see the people here, because this is the best of the best. The people here are the ones that can do something and will do something to change these wrongs against women and children. These are just 50 of Warren's wives. Let's see. This girl right here is Brenda Fisher. And we'll talk about her a little bit more later. She was 12, I believe, when she was married to Warren Jeffs. That's Mary Ann. She was 12 years old and 24 days, right there. And throughout here, when you go down, this is Vita Keep. She was one of the victims that helped to convict Warren. But as you go through here, each one of these, to me, has a story. Each one of these women. Some were his father's wives that when his father died, he picked the cream of the crop and married them to himself. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the places of refuge. In 2002, when Warren appointed himself prophet, his father died, he appointed himself prophet. He was able to bring in a couple witnesses to say that was his father's wish, that's what his father wanted. And when he brought them in, he also got rid of any detractors, anybody that might be competition for that job. And then he went around and started finding places of refuge, places where he could hide out, and places where he could go on the road and have way stations, I guess. One of those was here in El Dorado. Another one, last week I was in South Dakota in Rapid City, giving a briefing to law enforcement and the FBI there. They're very concerned about things that are going on there and fear something on the level of what happened here in El Dorado. And there's one in Mancos, Colorado, and then there's many that I'm sure that I don't know about. But that's where Warren keeps his closest confidants, and many of his wives. He has so many wives. Those were 50 of them. I've counted 87. Some people say there's more. What do you do with 87 wives? They're trophies to him. When I was in Mancos, Colorado, John Krakauer and I heard about this compound in Mancos. We went there, and we were approached by this man. His name is David Allred. David Allred is the person that Warren Jeffs sent around to find and purchase these places of these places of refuge. And he found the Mancos, Colorado compound in Texas and South Dakota, and probably others. He had a company that he invested, that they ran money through, called Daygro Trust. And he has a brother named Guy Allred. And Daygro stands for David and Guy Rely on Warren. This is the Mancos compound in the air. You can kind of see they tuck buildings away where they can't be seen, and this entire area is all the surrounding area around here is national forest. So they're very sequestered. They pick their places well. There's no building codes in that area. You don't have to go through the plan check and all those things you normally would. So this is in Pringle, South Dakota. And notice they put up this guard tower. And the big question is, John and I also went there and found that. And the big question is that tower there to keep people in or keep people out? We have a tendency to think it's to see what's going on. But if you're a young girl, say, that was married off at 12 years old or whatever, and you are tired of it, you discovered that building Zion isn't everything that you thought it might be, and you want out, they're also there to make sure nobody gets out. I recently, after the Warren went to prison, there's what is called church security, or we call it the God Squad. When I come into town, they pick me up 10 minutes outside of town, and they begin following me. When you get into town, there's cameras set up all over town that follow me wherever I go, and then I'm trailed and followed by the God Squad as well. And the God Squad is there. There's just recently some pictures released from the Washington County Attorney's Office. I thought they would be all of me, really, going through town. But most of them were the God Squad watching fellow members throughout town to make sure that they are keeping, following Warren's edicts. It's kind of, I'm trying to give it's so complex, and there's so many nuances to this, and there's so many ways that Warren controls his people, and he's a really brilliant tactician, and he really has found the hook as far as religious hook goes. And in South Dakota, this picture recently came out. You can see right along here, they're building a wall, exactly the same that they did in Texas, right around the temple in Texas. This foundation is massive. It's a huge foundation. It's about the size of a football field. The interior part right here is the size of a football field. They had to make a ramp to go in, to bring in the excavators and things like that to keep digging. We believe that they're probably going to put another temple there. This is El Dorado, Texas in the early days. This was about late 2004, I believe. And these buildings here, we call them H buildings, or some of them are just log cabins. They look like Motel 8s or something like that. For the beginning buildings. This is what it looked like in 2008 when the raid in Texas happened. I think just about everybody is familiar with the raid in Texas, but there was a call came in and law enforcement raided the compound there. I'll probably go into that a little bit more in a little bit. That's just another picture of what it looks like in Texas now. It's a town. They built a town there. This is their area in Bountiful, British Columbia. In Bountiful, when Warren came to power, he and Winston Blackmore had a falling out. So in Canada, half the people who live there are following Winston Blackmore, and half continue to follow Warren Jeffs. And so literally, you can be in one person's house and yard talking to them, they're friendly and nice, they're followers of Winston Blackmore. They'll more than likely invite you in. You might sit down and have a meal with them. The house across the street that are followers of Warren Jeffs have walls around, no trespassing signs, and if they see you, they run. Literally run. This is it.
I was in Utah climbing.
I'm just going to let you.
There was this town off the highway, so I said, I'll check it out, Color City.
We use it for.
It was weird.
Fundraising.
First thing I saw was all these little girls, and they were with this old guy who looked like their father, but they weren't acting like he was their father. And gosh, within seconds, a car pulled in right behind me and was tailgating me really aggressively. You know, I turned, took a turn, and he followed until I got back on the highway. Then he stopped and kind of stared, and I ripped out of it. I stopped and asked this ranger. I was in this town and I was being chased, and he said, "Oh no, that's Colorado City." And I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "That's the largest community of polygamists in the United States." And I said, "What?"
Obedience to God through His prophets is first and most important.
Warren Jeffs became the prophet when his father died in 2002.
Obey the prophet when he speaks, and you'll be blessed.
In Warren's whole life, he was told, "You were special. God chose you."
Disobey him, it is death.
I spent a great deal of time investigating Warren, and along the way, I met Sam Brower, private investigator. We learned that each was sort of doing the same thing, and then in 2004, we began investigating the FLDS.
Everything is under the auspices of the FLDS Church and Warren Jeffs. The city managers, the city councils, the people who pick up the garbage, everything. This really is the most lawless town in the country. The police department is owned and run by the church.
There was Warren's goodness. I mean, my fences were being cut 2 or 3 times a week at least, and they turned my animals loose out onto the highway. Chain and padlock have been cut and removed.
It's like something out of Orwell. Everyone in that town is controlled by Warren Jeffs.
They don't watch TV, they don't listen to radio, they don't read magazines or newspapers. They have no contact with the outside world.
Boys and girls are not allowed to even talk to each other, let alone that date.
It takes many women to make a man. And as he is like God, he is God over them.
This problem didn't just start with Warren. It just continued with him and got to where he exploited it like nobody ever has.
Warren's father had married, I think, about 80 women. When his father died, one of the things Warren did was all the most attractive women, and suddenly, just for reasons of power, he took them as wives of his own.
You can only get married and be a priesthood family by appointment of the prophets.
Family's not sacred anymore. The marriages around here, we call them Velcro marriages. He just pulls them apart, sticks them together. One woman probably said it very best. She was on her 5th husband. And she says, "I feel like a priesthood whore that's just getting passed around from one bullpen to the next."
A wife belongs to her husband. Her all is his.
I was brainwashed with the best of them. I mean, I got assigned my wife, and I went and married her without even batting an eyelash. Didn't even think about it. And, because that's what you do.
I never thought that it would be as deviant as it is. We thought that an underage bride might be 14, but as time goes on, we start hearing about 13-year-old girls and 12-year-old girls, even 11-year-old girls, 8 and 9-year-old girls being taken to some house in hiding and being trained as heavenly comfort wives.
Ladies, you let your husband by being submissive.
I did not want to be married at all. But I ended up talking to Warren and his father and pleading with them. I didn't have any idea where babies came from. I had no idea what had to happen physically to have a child.
I mean, they can't deny what they've done. They rape little girls. They take little girls and pawn them off to old legends.
Warren will cut some 12-year-old girl for himself, so he'll tell his family, "Your 12-year-old is going to marry me."
A woman's ability,
how that sexual relation in her childbearing years perfects the oneness.
There was this tape of a 12-year-old little girl being raped that was seized in his vehicle. It was taken to a federal judge, and Judge Benson sealed it, saying that it was protected religious material. It took 5 years for that recording to finally make it into a court of law in Texas.
Justice has arrived for Warren Steve Jeffs, who we expect to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Now Warren Jeffs will stay locked up for life because of sex crimes that outraged a Texas jury.
Okay, Warren's locked up in Texas. The church is going to crumble, there's going to be rival prophets. It turns out there's hundreds of different branches all across the West. Warren is still their prophet. They still listen to him. He illegally and secretly gets sermons by phone.
As a gift unto eternal life, the gift of power to keep safe and to obey.
I mean, Warren Jeffs is behind bars, that's great. But by the same token, he's been able to cause more suffering now than he was able to do while he was free.
There's a newly enforced ban on children's toys. Every FLDS elder has been told to cough up $5,000. Members must be rebaptized and profess their loyalty in personal interrogations.
Select group of 15 men will father all the future children in a group.
Underage FLDS girls are being held without their parents. The intimidating atmosphere in the FLDS community could lead to real trouble.
Historically, the federal government doesn't get involved until something horrible happens.
In doomsday prophecies by Jeffs, and a frenzy of unusual activities by his followers signals some new phase in the FLDS game plan.
We are going to have the judgments very soon, and we have got to be preparing to act accordingly.
This has happened before in Jonestown, Waco.
Those judgments are going to be furious.
People are starting to live in poverty. They're giving everything they have to the church. It paves the way for self-fulfilling prophecies that end tragically.
All of you are not going to survive.
One of the hardest things to overcome as far as dealing with the FLDS legally, from a legal standpoint, is the public's perception of them as a harmless group of people that are just taking wives. On the cab ride here last night, the taxi cab driver was telling me about how, well, if the wife agrees to it, what's wrong with that? And that's the perception. That's the perception National Geographic puts out there. They not only did this story, but they recently did a TV series that portrayed Centennial people who are a branch off of the FLDS as being just harmless, alternate lifestyle. As you can see, children are the ones being hurt. This was evidence seized in Reich, Texas. This is something that's passed out and put in their homes. Underage marriage is a way of life to them. It's what they do. Does anybody remember the board, the Star Trek pictures with the board on them? Jean-Luc Picard. That's what the FLDS reminds them. When something happens to them, they adapt. Whatever it is, they adapt. So the key to successfully prosecuting them is knowing that everything that happens to them they'll learn from. And they'll hire the most unscrupulous attorneys that you can think of, the highest paid attorneys you can think of. Their last attorney here in Texas, not their last one, but one of the most recent ones, Jerry Goldstein, was given $1 million payment to hire him. They gave him $1 million to start with. Not your everyday crook can afford that. So the key to going after the FLDS is really simple. There is no magic to it. The key to it is tenacity. You have to be willing to do it, and you have to be willing to not give up, because they're in it for the long haul. It's a religious calling to them, and they will do whatever it takes to please their prophet and to save their soul and buy their way into heaven. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. There's more, but I think we need to catch up a little bit. And so I'm going to go ahead and open it up for any questions that we may have.
What crimes are being done outside of their community? Obviously, there's plenty going on within the community. And how do they make their money?
Well, the crimes outside their community are the same ones that go on inside the community. They travel all over the country. Those underage marriages don't just happen within Short Creek. There were many that happened here in Texas. They've happened in other places of refuge. Probably underage marriage is like the central tenet of their religion. So everything is in support of that. Everything they do. So there's fraud. There's welfare fraud. There is. You name it. Any kind of crime they need to do to accomplish their purpose, they do. I mean, there's underage marriage, there's child abuse, there's child neglect. One of the first ones I worked on was the Lost Boys case. They will steal, they will lie. I mean, just think of a crime and they'll do it.
Are they selling drugs, for example?
Selling drugs was something that I've never been able to find actual evidence of it, but I've heard of people repeatedly over and over telling me about it. One of the people that was involved in that was a guy named Orson Black, who's now escaped and living in Mexico. So I believe that drugs was a part of bringing money in. Even filling the bishop's storehouse by going out with night vision scopes and silencers on their rifles. They'll have a team of snipers that go out and shoot deer, and and then another crew that comes in, cleans up the mess, butchers the animals up, takes them to the bishop's storehouse. It's very planned, well done, and carried out. Human trafficking is one, taking girls across for sexual purposes, and we didn't quite get to that, but one of Warren's brothers is a courier that does that, transfers money all around. Now they make their money in many ways. They have huge farming operations. There is a company called New Era Manufacturing. They began as Western Precision, and before that it was another company, the name escapes me now, but they were the company that made the O-rings for the Challenger space shuttle disaster. For Morton Thiokol, they were a subcontractor to them. They're one of the largest manufacturers of lighting in the West Coast. In fact, they are the largest. They have many construction companies that put in infrastructure all over the country. Vegas was just about built by the FLDS, the sewers, all the infrastructure, parks, and everything else in Vegas were done by the FLDS. So they have lots of different businesses, and they launder lots of different money. They set up shell corporations and shelf corporations and launder all their money through those corporations. So they're very, from an organized crime sense, they're very well put together and very well organized.
Is there anything else you want to conclude with and add?
There's so much that if I get started, I'll just keep going. So we'll just let it go for that.